Hello. So this is the second session of the class entitled Thinking Our Present, the Task of Modernity. And last time, which was the introductory first session, I was asking the participants whether they thought, as an exercise, we should rename the class, the course, or not. And we're going to start from there again. So I show you what we did. As you may have noticed, I have had a little cartoon about time. Someone saying, a woman saying to, I guess, husband, even though legal stuff was not yet created, you're late. And he answers, prove it. And the caption was, before time was invented. And we commented on it by saying that we can actually outsmart the cartoon by saying that there are ways we can know what time it is without a watch, without a clock. What are those possible ways?
You can tell the time through the seasons, can't you?
Yes, through the seasons. Can you be more precise?
Well, you know, when there's leaves on the tree, and
Yeah.
when the sun is high in the sky as well.
Exactly. From the seasons, from the movement of the stars and the moon. Exactly. And there's the moon on the cartoon. So, and also we mentioned, as I was trying to introduce the concept of resonance that we are going to talk about today, I was also mentioning something about nature, something else about nature that we may observe and that changes and that enables us to know more or less what time it is. What can it be?
I think that a lot of animals tend to start hibernating in the winter, don't they?
Yeah, not only that, not only the time of the seasons by the kind of animals you see outside, but also the noise of animals.
Yeah, the bird song.
The bird songs in the morning, for instance, or some of them at night. And in summer, you may have crickets, or what else? What do you have in England that would tell you more or less what time it is in the summer?
Tourists.
Yeah. Yeah. Different activities from different animals, especially in that era, when we would be inside nature in a way that we've lost now. And that also is something we're going to discuss today. Modernity as a different relationship to nature. So I just show you what we've done. So there were two possible titles. One of them was Thinking Our Present, and one of them was Thinking Our Time. And we were weighing which concept between present and time was more difficult to think about. And we were saying the present is more difficult. You can argue that the present is more difficult to think about. Why?
Because it's fleeting.
Because it's fleeting. Because it's more...
It's more transient.
I think because it's joined to the past.
We didn't hear you very well.
I think because it's joined to the past. I think because it's joined to the past and the future, so it's quite hard to, you know, kind of place yourself in the present place, because sometimes you're kind of like thinking about the past, or you're, where you're going to be in the future, sort of thing.
Yeah. So you're saying two things, I think. You're saying the present is difficult to think about because we keep thinking about the past and the future. And also, as it is placed in between the future and the past, it's such a tiny moment that it's nowhere to be found. I'm always in the memory of my past and in the projection of what I'm going to do. Yeah. But yet you can.
I don't think that it can't be found. I just think it's difficult to place it. That's
exactly.
all. I think that it is there. I just don't think that it's particularly graspable, like in its wholeness. I think that we're kind of like conjoined to.
Yeah. Okay. So I was trying to make as well the argument that would say that time is actually more difficult to think about. How would you build this argument?
Epochs, time can mean different things to perhaps different people. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very, and you're coming back to something we discussed. I'm sorry, so I haven't mentioned Susie. Hello, Susie, nice to meet you. Never seen you before. Your microphone is not on, which is a right that you have to keep it up. Hello.
Sorry, I didn't realise you had one on the 24th for us. I would have come to that one too.
No problem. And I want to say hello to Inessa as well, that I didn't salute, and Sneak as well. We are going, and I'm going to share the screen so that you know what I'm doing. I'm sorry I wasn't doing that before. Do you see my screen now?
No.
Not really.
No, not at all.
We can see the list of the introduction to last week.
Exactly. That's what I mean by my screen. Yeah. That's what you should be seeing. And so we titles. Yeah, you see that?
Yeah.
Where the cursor is?
We got it.
And we can compare those two titles, thinking our present and thinking our time. Do they mean the same thing to you? Not really, right? Because time incorporates more than just the present, as it incorporates as well the past and the future. So you can make the argument that time is more difficult to conceptualize because not only you would have to conceptualize the present, but also the past and the future. Wow. Okay. And you were making an interesting point, Scott, by saying what?
Well, thinking about epochs. So I remember listening to the radio a few months ago, and it was talking about when the 1960s started in terms of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And they said it started with the Beatles, as in terms of a collective reference. Now, the Beatles didn't start as we classically know them in terms of the Red Album, and it started in something like 1962. And you could then classify the end of the 1960s, if you were a real Beatles fan, you'd say it stopped in, I don't know, 1969 was the last time they may have played live on the top of Abbey Road or something like that. It wasn't at it wasn't at Abbey Road, but it just, that would symbolize an epoch. And I think we think more in epochs possibly than we do in terms of just linear generational 1960 to 1970 or whatever.
Yeah. So you're saying...
Do you define epoch, what you actually mean by epoch, though?
Era, E-R-A. It's more of a way of it for me, it's a way of engaging with something culturally, or you know, Clinton could have been an epoch. You talk about millennials being a generation, but it's
cultural generations. No?
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, say that again, Antoine.
Cultural generations.
That's a good word.
It could be cultural or political. It could be lots of things. Epoch. It's really about a subject that encompasses, isn't it? So, yeah, I think. Sorry, Susan.
I was just thinking a bit after what you said, Scott. Let's take the Beatles. If we're thinking of time, if that's the sort of way we're going to see epoch, that's interesting, because I would say that I have 2 generations of children, and all of them are into the same epoch as me, which was the Beatles. So that's interesting when you said cultural, because that's not taking into consideration time, but more of a feel of time, a period of time, but not a period, exact period 1962 or anything, because the same generations were feeling the same thing about the same band, and they're far, you know, apart from each other.
So let's come back to what Scott was saying at first. If I remember well, it was that we can mean many things by the word time. Was it what you were saying?
Yeah.
And that's actually the point that Etienne Klein and Vincent Bontemps were making by saying time is too vague of a notion, and we need to operate what Paul Valéry, a famous poet, called a cleaning of the verbal situation, by using more specific terms as you did, such as epoch, era, cultural generation, simultaneity, or duration, or words that can be encompassed by the word time, but are more specific, so we know what we are talking about more precisely. They are better tools for understanding. And I was concluding the second part of the introduction by saying, thus, the word present seems preferable, as it is what I try to theorize in its complex relationship with the past and the future, and in its essential relationship with the notion of modernity. And that's something we saw last term, that modernity could be defined as a way philosophy or intellectuals have questioned what is the specificity or singularity of the moment they are living in, and then further, if this is a singular moment in time, what should I be thinking as a thinker? Like, for instance, now, if we take into consideration that there are many problems happening now that I can think about, such as global warming or climate change, such as the extinction of many species, such as the rise of sea levels, etc. Then, if I have thought about that as defining the moment we are living in, what from this understanding should I focus on as a thinker now? What should be my problems as a thinker now? And that's where I come to a problematization, time and change, etc. I'll let you read it if you haven't yet. And it was a little Socratic or Platonic dialogue I had with a friend.
I think the main problem for me to think about is the idea that singularity means the number one. So, you know, this whole sort of one thing in this, like, I don't know, like the one or one love or just one way of thinking, and that can kind of come into the kind of problem of thinking when you're kind of on your own, this kind of coming from a place of I, like what should I think? It's a very singular way of thinking. I think that's the main problem, like the fact that singular can be mistaken for the number one, when singular can mean like the complete history of time itself.
Yeah, it's a very good how would you say, it's a very good comment that you just made, because indeed we should not confuse singularity as meaning I want to be original in my opinion by expressing something that is so personal, etc., etc., with something else that I meant by singularity as the specificity of the moment we all are living in, and we can all agree on, is something quite objective, right? It's quite objective that there is a climate change happening, and no matter how original, punk, or whatever, whether you prefer The Cure, or you prefer The Doors, or you prefer drinking almond milk or hemp milk, you don't express your singularity here by recognizing that there is enough evidence to admit that there is climate change happening, and that defines the singularity of the period we are living now. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
So we are not trying to be original thinkers. We are trying, in a sense, to be modern thinkers, which means something different, which means thinking from the particular position in time we are in, and nobody between us has asked to be born in the years, in the decades we were born in, but it's a fact and we have to face the reality as it is. Personally, I would have been glad to know the 70s. I haven't, but it's okay. I can just look at videos and listen to cool songs. Anyway.
I think that the idea of the individual should be changed. I think that, like, at the moment, the individual counts as the number one, whereas and it's very self-driven. It's very much, you know, about the self. Whereas I think the individual should be a more collective idea, like the idea of a collective individual, maybe.
You have that in Deleuze and Guattari's philosophy with the idea of multiplicity. The multiplicity is at once an entity that is singular and collective. So for instance, right now, with you guys, I am forming a singularity because you are singular points in history and geography, and we are connected, and this is what they would call a multiplicity. It's a singular object, yet it's a collective object. So I agree with you, Helen, very much. Also, one idea that you brought is very interesting, is that modernity has emphasized the idea of the individual. Modernity is often defined as what has valued the individual as in its autonomy to decide for what makes them happy, for instance. Before, in the classical age, everybody would recognize, like it so happens in some countries still now, that God is the biggest value, and that there is one way that the church tells you to be good and find goodness in your life. with modernity and the questioning of religions, it's up to individuals to decide whether or not they want to be monogamous or polyamorous, whether or not they want to be vegan or omnivorous, etc.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's perhaps why it's thought that perhaps people become too have too much choice and get too confused and can get a little lost as a result.
Yeah, that's the introduction of the Hartmut Rosa's book that we are talking about today. Indeed, and it's also close to some thinker that we've studied last term, who was Eva Illouz, who was studying love matchings, and she was saying that before you would choose a partner in terms of class, in terms of what's the most rational for you as the member of a certain class, with a limited amount of choice. Nowadays, the amount of choice is much bigger with transportation, much less so though since the COVID has happened, as you may know. But we've been used to a certain diversity, much more than our grandparents or great-grandparents, who were maybe living in villages and who had maybe 10 people their age in their social class around them, right?
Mm.
So let's go a bit further in what I have planned, unless you have other things to say.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah, of course.
I know that we have a lot of choice of information which can give us an agreed sort of singularity of what's happening. But how do we deal with misinformation? Because besides being a lot of information, there's a lot of misinformation, depending on what you mean by misinformation, of course. So how do we deal with that to come up with a singularity or thought?
I think we need here, it's too broad of a problem for me to answer you. So I would say, if I understand your question, yes, in a sense, the goal of our lives is to singularize ourselves. So we are not just the products of social and capitalistic determinations. I'm not just a bourgeois who likes to drink white beer. I am also a more creative person who writes poetry, so on and so on. And you're saying what comes in, what is the importance of misinformation in the processes of singularization, if I understand your question. Well, I would say they are numerous, as there are many kinds of misinformations. You can be misinformed on presidential election candidate, for instance, and vote for them, being biased by a different country who wants to influence you. That's the kind of misinformation, right? It had some effect in the election of the US president. You can be misinformed about your family, or who they were, etc. You might learn that your grandparent was actually collaborating with the Nazis or something like that, and you were misinformed all your life. Yet I don't see it as something that would impede singularization. You can even inform yourself better, misinform yourself, and make this a process of singularization, you know, the way to misinform yourself. I've seen a few films on that, you know, someone learning that his grandfather was not the kind of person he was, etc. So misinformation can actually profit in the process of singularization. Okay, that was just a reminder of what we did last time. I'm just going to close a few tabs here. And what is important for me to open now? Have you all watched the little video? Maybe so that I shut up for a while, we watch the little video, which is here. So this is a video cartoon to introduce the concept of resonance by Hartmut Rosa that we are going to comment on afterwards. Let's watch it together. Let me know if there's any problem with sound or image.
Le propre de nos sociétés modernes, c'est qu'elles nous soumettent à une logique de croissance illimitée. C'est surtout au travail, en politique et dans notre vie privée, nous cherchons en permanence à en faire plus de plus. Plus de sport, plus de progrès techniques, plus de loisirs, on cherche même à optimiser nos performances. Tout se passe comme si on avait peur de ce qui pourrait se passer si on arrêtait d'augmenter notre productivité. Un peu comme si on était sur un vélo et qu'on risquait de tomber sur un petit peu de pédale. Mais quelle est la solution? Faire une pause? Prendre ses RTT pour faire le plein d'énergie et recommencer à courir dès la rentrée? Non. Parce que ce n'est pas cette course à l'ennui le problème. Pour Rosa, la solution, ce n'est pas la lenteur, mais la résonance. D'après lui, nous vivons une vie
I'm realizing you may not hear anything. Are you hearing anything?
No, but we've got all the captions.
Okay. Do you want me to start over?
Yes, I think so. I've just swapped.
You know what we can do is everybody has the link, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You want to watch it by yourself?
I think it might be easier if you just directed us from your as the main person that decides, if you don't mind.
Okay, let's continue watching it with the captions, and you'll watch it by yourself afterwards.
I'm quite happy watching it with the captions, even though they're going a bit quick.
en mesurant le nombre de pas qu'on fait au quotidien, on peut à tout prix évaluer nos performances et nous situer dans la production permanente de notre vie. Ce sont les conditions idéales pour le burn-out. C'est ça que Rosa décrit. Tout est mort. Ce sentiment d'absurdité nous frappe quand plus rien ne nous parle. Quand nous avons perdu toute résonance avec les autres. Or, tout le monde ne nous parle plus parce que nous le considérons comme un dossier infini qui a l'envie d'arrêter de faire. À force d'avoir accès à tout, on sent bien qu'on ne peut plus les choses. Pourquoi? Parce que cette indisponibilité du monde suscite le
Is my coat inside? Or is it still in the car? What coat? I like coat. Oh, so that's what you can wear.
Rendre notre rapport au monde moins aliénant. Pour Rosa, on est en résonance quand on s'adresse au monde. C'est une autre chose. Ça peut paraître une chose de folie, mais ce n'est pas tout à fait.
Can I really go out like this?
Être à l'écoute d'une idée qui nous vient lors d'une discussion, sans qu'on
All right. Come up when you're ready.
refuser de gâcher le fruit d'un travail gratuit au nom de l'impératif. Il s'agit simplement d'admettre que tout ne marcherait pas justement, et que ni la nature, ni nos collègues ne sont des ressources disponibles et manipulables à leur.
Okay. I'm trying to come back to
Nice, yeah.
okay. I'm trying to have you fully my screen, but I don't know how to do that.
Go to the top and just come off of it.
Where
the green thing is. You can click off of it.
I could have shared that was sharing the sound.
What's it?
What?
Chips.
No, cover up there.
There's no what?
No coverage.
Really?
We got the gist of what you were saying, Antoine, anyhow, or what
Okay.
what it was
Here
saying in terms of content.
Here we are. Okay, nice. Thank you, Scott. And that's better. Very good. Someone messaged me, Matt did. It's okay. So let's go back to what we were discussing. I want to ask you a few questions and come back from to thinking our present, session 2, the task of modernity. A, an exercise based on the comparison of 2 articles on and with Hartmut Rosa. So the small clip of introduction. Do you have anything to say about resonance, what you have understood? Is it something that you intuitively are feeling? Is it something you felt before? Is it something you feel close to?
If I could just interject here, yes. And when in the captions, the written captions, it was talking about life being a bit absurd. And we can feel on the outside a bit dead and on the inside a bit dumb, as it was suggesting. So, and you know, if, yes, the idea that, you know, if we're just to see jobs in the way of how, where I work, for instance, they're very big at the moment on how many letters we produce or how quickly we go at our jobs, which is very much a bit like in that, I think we looked last term at the Charlie Chaplin film where he's, Les temps modernes, the modern times.
Yeah.
And so I think there is that kind of world we live in, and it tries to compensate through technology, but it still doesn't work for us.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent example, or actually counter example of what resonance is, right? You cannot achieve resonance in such a plant, in such a manufacturing plant as he was working on. It's what Marx used to call alienation. You can you can achieve resonance, for instance, as a music player by playing the very right note when you are supposed to be playing it, and playing like a machine in the right sense, right? In a good sense of the word. Yet being used as a machine or as a piece of the machine, as we could say, is a totally different experience. It's not at all being in resonance with things. It's the exact opposite. It's what we have mentioned as alienation. Excellent example to actually understand. And it's also an excellent example to illustrate the idea that Rosa came up with before resonance, which is acceleration. Acceleration is a very easy concept actually to understand with this little clip that you may all have in mind of Charlie Chaplin trying to screw parts of a piece of a puzzle, right? In a big, how do you say when people chain working, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just a piece of the puzzle, and he doesn't feel anything. There's also this concept that I've discussed before with you, I think. It's this concept by Barthes called idiot, as in idiot, which means actually singular, rhythmy. Idiorhythmy means having your own rhythm. So
Could you say the word again, Antoine?
Yeah, it's rhythm. The second word is rhythm, rhythmy, with a Y. Idio, IDIORYTHMY. Idiorhythmy.
Okay.
And you can say idiorhythmic. I don't know how many dictionaries would acknowledge this word, but I promise to you that it exists as a concept. So it's the idea that you have a singular rhythm which is yours. For instance, you get up in the morning when you feel like getting up. You do something when you feel like it. For instance, go on the beach for a walk, or study for 2 hours when you feel like it, etc. At your pace. You have lunch when you want to, etc., etc. And then maybe as you live like that, you are able to communicate with your surroundings in what Hartmut Rosa names resonance. Wow. which can be the way you play guitar as well. For instance, if you play guitar,
I disagree.
Disagree, please.
I disagree, Anton.
Yeah.
Because I think if you have a singular rhythm of your own, then you're disconnected. You're disconnected from everything. So
that's
you know,
a good point.
the only way that you can feel rhythm is when you're connected to something. You can't have it isolated in yourself.
Can I just interject there, Helen? If we think about, whilst we can be singular, we are perhaps in rhythm, even if we're going at our own pace, because in terms of my breathing, I'm just breathing in my own space. The sun, the moon, everything turns independently, luckily, of us all at the moment. So does it really make that much difference as to that? I understand.
Yeah, but it's not, Scott, it's not your own space though. It's a shared space. It's the space of the universe. We all share it. We don't have our own space, do we?
I think both are arguable. You can say in a Leibnizian way that everybody is a monad, a singular perspective on the world that incorporates the world, right? And you can say indeed in a more, how would you say that, realistic way, that less idealist, if you want, that the world is as it is, whether we perceive it or not as it is, and we share it, as you say, Helen. Both points are, both perspectives are possible.
Thank you.
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's this whole idea that humans are special or something, that we have something inside of us that is unique or something like that. It's ridiculous. It's like we're part of nature. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think it's ridiculous. I do feel what you say, but I think, what do you think, Scott or Neil or anybody else?
I think I can see how you're relating it to modernism, modernity,
yeah,
and how we become part of a machine, and how in previous times we may have lived in that way where we went to sleep or if we wanted to stay up, we would have gaslight. But you know, modernity gives us the convenience to change the patterns of time. Modernity is about time. It's about sort of our railways running on time, and so I can see how you're linking that to time, yeah, I can see both sides of that argument as well. I think today it becomes somebody who's perhaps affluent enough to, or what's another word, but affluent enough perhaps to be able to do things when they want to. It is a preoccupation of the rich, maybe, to just do things when they feel like it, to get up when you want to.
It's not possible to do things when you want to. You have to wait for the tomatoes to be in season. You have to eat breakfast on time. You have to go to bed at a certain time. No one has that freedom.
That's what I'm saying, Helen, is that with modernity, you can get those tomatoes flown from the other side of the world. You can get whatever you want because of modernity. Really, you can go to bed, or you can travel in an aircraft until you get to another time zone when it's time to get up. You can play with those things.
Does anyone know how I end the sharing of the screen?
Yeah, you go to the top and it says view options at the top of your screen. You've got the green thing.
Yeah.
And then your view options, you should be able to turn it off.
Yeah.
What does it say in your view options?
Écran, screen. I don't know.
Have you got an option where you can actually make one of us the host and we could take it off for you?
I wish I knew how to do that. I'm sorry for that. No.
I think it's different, isn't it? And I've just switched because I've got a bad connection, so I've switched to an iPad, and it's quite different on the controls.
If you've got share screen, inside the screen, it says allow multiple people to share the screen.
I've just got share content. I've got nothing, participants, and then there's no way to see everybody at once.
Have you got a share screen?
No.
Not you, no. The host is going to do it. The host has got shared screen. At the moment, the option is that you can't share this screen. I mean, we can't all have a share.
Arrêtez le partage. Very good.
Switch to gallery view. Yes, now I see. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Susie.
That's all right. I'm sorry. I was going to say something about what you guys were discussing, and I think I've been through this before with another group, and we came to the conclusion. We came to conclusion that if you didn't see the world in a multiplicity state, then you were probably in a state of madness. This is what we came to the conclusion, because I was arguing that there's two sides of it: our private side, where we have our own kind of world, and we have a public side where we have to have the multiplicity, or whatever you call it. If you don't accept the public side, then you're not accepting a whole society thing. You're not accepting the universal thing, because there's certain agreements that we have in our persons about the universe. You know, we see the sun, so to speak. It's a bit complicated, but all I'm saying is that we came to the conclusion that if you didn't accept that, and you weren't accepting, then you were crazy in a way, because you couldn't accept it. You couldn't accept what's there in front of you. And then there's other levels where you can't accept it, because you have to argue it before you accept it anyway. It's a bit complicated in my mind now. But I know what I'm saying.
Is it about phenomenology, perhaps?
Yeah.
So we see it, but we can only see it through our senses.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Sort of. You can see something. You can see the sun is shining. Obviously, we can't see lots of other things, but all of us can see the sun is shining. You know, so that is an acceptance that we have of this universe, or the world.
Yes.
The sun is shining, but there's a lot of stuff, you know, that we probably wouldn't accept if we were talking about things privately to ourselves. You know, we might think
I think that's slightly derogatory towards mad people, actually, because you know, mad people have the right to have their own imaginations. Do you know what I mean? And to question things and to think about things in a different way. You
exactly.
know?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Because
exactly.
Yes.
The problem with mad people is they're not being accepted into the whole universal scheme of things. They're being outcast by people because they're not accepted into the acceptance of society. They don't want to accept society as it is. I think they're quite revolutionary, mad people, and I think they get put down quite hard, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting, that argument, because that is definitely an argument that was put forward as well when we were discussing it. But when we come back to resonance, I think what they were arguing is that perhaps people who labelled, inverted commas, as mad were not resonating in the same way as the universal acceptance of people.
Yeah, here we have to specify what we mean by mad, because mad can mean many different things, even opposite things.
I think that it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters if you're mad or not. I think naturally we all have a resonance in our mind, you know, to nature and to the natural rhythm of nature, you know. And I think that, you know, if you just be at peace with it and you just let it go, move with it, you know, work with it, learn from it, you know, this whole idea that we might have a different point of view, or we're not being included, or we are included, or our worlds are smaller than others and some worlds are bigger than others, you know, we all essentially have the same rhythm. That's what I think resonance is.
Okay.
But the trouble is, I actually agree with that view, but it's not, I don't think it's a working view, a practical working view, if we see it how it is in our present day, because not everyone is resonant in the same way. And that's exactly the problem. When they're not seeing what you're seeing, Helen, they're not seeing the beauty, they're not seeing the practicalities of nature and what it does for you. They can see things in a different way and therefore not be resonant in the same way.
I would like this discussion, which was very good, to be interrupted for a pause, because it would be better to continue it if we read the article on resonance that we have to discuss, and then we can continue the discussion.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share the screen again and see if we can all read from the same screen. Partager. And so now, can you see this file that I have here?
Double click.
Doesn't work?
Yeah,
Yes.
It does now.
Wonderful. So resonance as the key to a successful life. Can somebody start the reading?
I'll start if you want.
Wonderful.
After having highlighted the disturbance caused by the permanent acceleration of our societies, the philosopher and sociologist Hartmut Rosa proposes a theory of resonance. According to him, it is this type of relationship to the world that makes the quality of existence, but it requires political and social conditions that are absent today. Can someone pick up from there?
No, go ahead.
Among the analyses produced on the Yellow Vest, Bernard Calora suggested that beyond their immediate demands, many of them were probably in search of resonance. Attentive to the stories of fraternization experienced on roundabouts, the anthropologist concluded that at the heart of this movement lay a sensitive and relational dimension in relation to a distant and deaf mode of government, but also to a commercial world made of silent, abstract, cold, and non-resonant relationships.
I'm going to make the text a bit bigger to help you.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
Can you continue?
Yes. What, me?
Yeah, go Niall. Go Niall.
Okay, I'm gonna. It's still not that big, that text.
Okay.
This concept of resonance, Calora borrowed from the German philosopher and sociologist, that's better, Hartmut Rosa, who had just published an essay under this title in La Découverte editions, Bushy and Ambitious. His book offers nothing less than a sociology of the relationship to the world. According to him, the possibility of leading a successful life would depend on the quality of that relationship. The more so it would be resonant. Rosa's reflection follows on from previous highly regarded opus, from highly regarded opus entitled Acceleration, editions 2013. In this book, he offered an explanation for the paradox according to which we seem to be running out of time more and more when we have more and more technologies that are supposed to save us. He showed us that our late modernity is characterized by a self-sustaining circle of acceleration, of innovation, social change, and rhythms of life. According to him, you're in the way, a dynamic ended up causing both an instability of individual identities, a narrowing of the expectation, and because I can't see it, in the direction of the time resources necessary for equality.
We are here. A narrowing of the horizons of expectation.
Sorry, I can't, narrowing of the horizon of expectation. Yeah.
Why do they say horizons as in plural?
Okay, let's come back to the beginning of the sentence and we try to understand it. Can you read it again, Nihal?
According to him, such a dynamic ended up causing both an instability of individual identities, a narrowing of the horizons of expectation, and the destruction of the time resources necessary for a quality political process.
For quality political process. Okay. So narrowing of the horizons of expectations. Here, horizon is used as a metaphor, right? There is this concept in the philosopher's Yau's theory, which is horizon of expectation. It's the idea that when something such as an artwork, for instance, is produced, it's not received the same way by the people of a certain time. Let's say the artwork was produced during the Middle Ages. It's not perceived the same way in the Middle Ages as it is perceived now.
So is it saying that we're running out of time, and because of the not agreements but disagreements of stuff, that it's making it rather dangerous?
So a narrowing of the horizons of expectation and the destruction of the time resources necessary for a quality political process.
So, and they're saying also that the politics is the most important thing, aren't they? That the quality of political process will actually give us that resonance. Is that what you're saying? The quality of political process will give us the stability of the individual identities to produce the resonance that we need.
Here, this is a paragraph that is not yet talking about the book that was after Acceleration. This book, Acceleration, should be in italics. It was before Resonance. And so this paragraph is explaining the theory in this book.
Right. Yeah.
Which is not opposed at all. It's kind of preparing the theory that came up with the book Resonance. Indeed, if everything goes faster, for instance, let's say before the smartphones were invented, everybody was fine with what was the possibilities, was fine understanding the possibilities of a phone, right? Now, a phone is just an app among others on what is a smartphone, right? On a smartphone, you have many, many things. And you see what I'm saying is that the horizon of what I perceive to be the next generation of what's going to be is very narrow, because things there are innovations all the time, disrupting my conception of what is, right?
I think that, I think it can be related to time in the sense that if you think of time as a man-made machine that goes tick, 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 we're kind of we're kind of thinking in the same way about making the points of where we're going. We're like, okay, make a point, make a point, make a point, make a point, make a point. I think that it's kind of being led by a design of a man-made machine. We're not going to be able to think about time outside of what's actually happening unless we step outside of the idea of actual man-made time, which is tick, 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 tick. If we can get out of that and into some sort of peaceful way of being, then we could maybe kind of reflect on, you know, our relationship with the world, you know, properly, rather than being driven by it, by what's being told, or being bogged down by point after point after point. We have space to kind of think for ourselves and really get in touch with, you know, what's real, what's really going on for ourselves and, you know, for the people that we love, you know.
I think you've just described modernity. We could just stop now. I'm joking, but no, it's great. I think it's a great point.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, let's move further. Magisterial, would you read more, Neil?
Magisterial, the demonstration could leave the reader at a loss as how to escape this destructive spiral of the aptitudes to control our individual and collective destinies. With her new book, Rosa.
Well, so there's a big mistake here. It's because I used Google Translate. It's with his new book.
Okay.
I guess Google Translate was kind of smart. This error is out of being smart from the AI, because Rosa sounds like a girl, right? So that's why Google Translate proposed her new book.
Yes.
But it's actually a man. It's his last name.
And expands her. There's another one as well.
Okay, I'll try and take that in. With his new book, Rosa expands his diagnosis and outlines a way out, asserting from the outset that if the problem is acceleration, the solution is not deceleration. He does not deny, in fact, that modern energizing processes have positively changed the lives of an extraordinary number of people, improving their well-being and breaking the sclerosing effects of a tradition. Is that from sclerotic?
Oh.
From sclerotic?
Sclerotic, as in your body seizing up, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
It's
where
from
that comes
sclerosis. Yeah, yeah.
Sclerosis, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Can I read on a little bit? Is that all
Yeah,
right?
of course, please.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, now. The real remedy, according to Rosa, would therefore be the regular experience of resonance. The apparently rather vague outlines of the concepts are enough to arouse suspicion and the fear of dealing with a personal development manual for stressed city dwellers. The author is moreover aware of this, evoking for himself the potential commercial uses of resonance. The better to show its illusionary character. Fortunately, the more we progress in reading the book, the more this primary concern is diffused. Not only does Rosa not play smart, he offers more critical theory of resonance ratios than turnkey solutions, but he strives to produce a rigorous demonstration grounding in impressive scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
Shall I carry on?
Yeah.
That's the title. That's the title.
A vibrating chord between oneself and the world.
So that's, that could be used as a definition, right, of what resonance is. A vibrating chord between oneself and the world. And the idea,
it's the connection.
Yeah, a connection. And the idea of having, you see, oneself and the world, it's not opposing ideorhythmy to the world. We can have, all of us, different rhythms and still adapt to living together in the same world.
Yeah, I think this idea of acceleration is really important.
Yeah.
I think we need to pull ourselves back, and I think this idea of kind of reaching for something comes from the idea that we're surrounded by emptiness, and this comes from a lack of connection. You know, we live in an age of communication and information, but we're more disconnected than I would reckon, any time in history. And I think that we have this idea, you know, we're walking around and we're not connected. You know, we're connected by the machine, by phones and things like that, and we're kind of looking into the machine and it's kind of this acceleration, this reaching for something, when actually, you know, we're kind of surrounded by a soul. You know, we are living within a soul, a universal soul, and we all have souls, and it's this idea that we don't have souls, and it's crushing everybody. You know, it's like we're alive, we're meant to be, you know, really affectionate towards each other, really care for one another, but we're not doing it. We're not caring for the planet. It's just being, and this idea of acceleration is kind of this kind of reaching into the void, into this idea of nothingness. There is no idea of nothingness. Nothingness is not true. We are fully bound with an essence, what I think is an essence of a soul, a universal soul that we are all within, and we all have souls that connect us to animals and nature and everything. And this is just being completely forgotten.
I don't think. Sorry,
go ahead.
I was going to say I was on a course. I do clowning, and I was on a course today where there was psychologists on the course that had never done it. And one of the things about this particular facilitator is that she believes in connection and humanity. And I think it's really interesting that psychologists are coming on to clowning Zooms to learn about connection. And so, Helen, what you're saying is very, very interesting. And what the book is saying, the vibrating chord, really is a lovely way of describing connection, the vibrating chord. it also reminds me of the old-fashioned, you have a tin and you have a piece of string and you have a tin the other side. And as children, we used to try and talk through the tin to get to the other side. You know, it's the vibrating cord. It's really interesting.
Yeah, they use it in yoga, you know, those vibrating balls as well.
Yeah.
For meditation. Yeah, and one thing I wanted to mention is that the clip we saw as an introduction and some of the things that were said afterwards reminded me of that clip that Moby did for one of, you know, Moby, the singer, musician, that he did recently about the fact that we all connected to our smartphones all the time, but so disconnected to each other and the world. Maybe you've seen it. I will add it to the
that'd be interesting.
Yeah. So while making her subject accessible through fables, so it's not her subject, right? It's his subject. Fables and examples. Do you want to continue, Susie?
Okay. Through fables and examples taken from everyday life, Rosa demonstrates analytical clarity and mobilizes a considerable amount of knowledge in the human sciences, as well as numerous literary references. It doesn't take less to give consistency to what he defines as a form of relation to the world, in which the subject and the world touch and mutually transform. In other words, the exact opposite of the experience of the observed, wrote by C. Amos, is that?
Camus.
Or
you know
Camus?
Camus? Yeah.
Oh, Camus, sorry. While the latter described the unreasonable silence of the world, which the human demand for meaning usually encounters.
Excellent.
So the humans demand silence.
So here, silence of the world is not a good connotation of the word silence.
Right.
It's silence as unmeaningful.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Meaningless. Sorry.
Oh.
Continue, please. A resonant relationship.
A resonant relationship remains open as to its content. In the first chapters, Rosa evokes both the communion felt with nature as well as listening to Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen, the purring of the cat, the comfort of an old woman, friendship or fervour engendered by collective events. However, each time it designates unexpected moments, precious because they are rare, during which we feel interest and fullness with regard to a fragment of the world that we have the feeling to reach, while allowing ourselves to be touched and affected by him.
Well, actually, I think it's by it, right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's him.
Yeah.
Employing the metaphor of two tuning forks which match one another, Rosa also speaks of a vibrating string effect, from Latin displays, to seek, to reach, and emotion from Latin immover, moving out of. Thus constitutes the two aspects of this string to the bidirectional vibration. I'd like that to be explained a bit more. Vibration. For the author, this type of relationship is one of the primary dispositions of human beings, and each of us has been able to experience. Its purpose is therefore descriptive, but it is also normative. The scarcity of resonance experiences would indeed make life less bearable, which would help to explain certain increasingly well-documented manifestations of exhaustion or psychic crisis, such as burnouts or depressions.
So you were.
It's like I was just thinking. Is the like confirmation of identity the most like relevant thing to our time? Because it seems like it's kind of like I need to be confirmed by another person about who I am. Is that really, really important?
Well, it's actually where you hear last term.
Helen, give him a chance. Give him a chance, Helen, just for a second. Antoine?
Were you here last term, Helen, when we discussed Evailus?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
So I think we kind of saw that together. I hope so, because it's a lot in our book. The idea that modernity has made us more willing to be confirmed in our singularity as someone valuable by a partner in a relationship. So that's why, as the title,
I remember that clearly.
Yeah, that's why, as the title of a book says, love. So, you know, the title is "Why Does Love Hurts?" Something like that. Why? Pourquoi l'amour fait mal? Why love hurts? Why love hurts? And so it's why love hurts. It's because as we have become more and more singularized, we need more and more to be confirmed in our value, as the value is not something general that we can, how would you say that, find.
We can have affirmed. I mean, it's the same in the community with volunteers. One of the strongest rules of a volunteer coordinator is to recognize what the volunteers are doing, and also for the volunteers to know that you recognize it. So it's an affirmation of them being the volunteer, a person who's doing that particular thing. So it's the same with people. It's the psychology of people.
Yeah, good point.
We need to feel not important, but we need to feel that we exist. That's how I feel it anyway. That's
it was just to play the flip coin on that. I suppose what is so striking is the fact that we do need to be almost so consumed in a relationship with another. I mean, because that too can speak of codependency, and then perhaps not being able to be so autonomous. I'm not disagreeing with it. I think it's a wonderful thing, and that love between people is the best drug. Okay, but it also can be. It's got its flip. It's got its flip side. It can be dangerous too.
Yeah, of course.
If you're not very strong.
Exactly. That's the point that Evailus is one of the points she's trying to make, is that it seems at first a very good thing, and Hartmut Rosa goes in the same direction. It's a good thing in the sense that we can all singularize ourselves and affirm which are our values. Like, you don't have to believe in the same God as I do. You don't even have to believe in God. We don't all have to go to church on Saturdays and Sundays. We can prefer that form of diet to that form of diet. It depends. It's a choice that you make in your life. So your life is an experiment that you create yourself. It's very good, but in a sense, since there is no ultimate value to make you feel sure about the value of the life that you're leading and creating, you have to have at least one other being that would be there all the time for you, to tell you how much you matter, how much they love you, to reassure you in this affirmation of your singularity.
That's really interesting, because obviously there's going to be exceptions to that. And when I'm thinking of the COVID, and I'm thinking of the people I work with, quite a lot of them are isolated. They were already isolated. So the COVID has made not 1 ounce of difference to them at all. And they're still as isolated as they were. And therefore quite you know, some people have broken down because they've not been able to communicate. And yet these people who supposedly have mental health issues have actually been quite self-sufficient because they're used to the situation. And it's interesting when your values break down, how that resonance changes.
Definitely. Oh yeah.
You know, it's the irony of life, I think.
And in this irony came as well the fact that many people who were considered as stars were shown in their feebleness, as they were so much dependent on their fans to exist, you know, and posting videos of themselves all the time during the COVID period. That showed them in a very weak position, you know.
I don't know. I think you can look at that in 2 ways. One way is they're showing videos to show that they still exist, yes. But they're also showing videos, hopefully, to show different ways of creating their talents as well. So I mean, you could look at it in different ways.
But don't they say that comics or stars, part of the attraction for them, and one of the is that that you know, they're there on the stage because their ego needs it, so they need the applause just to keep on going. So it's almost like they've got to produce and keep on doing that in order to kind of.
I think this idea of isolation is ridiculous because nothing comes from nothing. Do you know what I mean? It's like you have to have something that causes an idea in someone. They're not isolated with it. Even if they feel that they're on their own with it, it's because they're incapable of sharing it, or some sort of suppression that they feel that they can't actually relate to the emotion of it or something like that. But it comes from
scared of society. They're scared of.
It comes from something. So nobody is on their own with a belief, Anton.
Okay, I agree. Let's move on though, because all those things are beautiful, but we are a bit far from the text.
Okay.
The next paragraph, anybody, would you like to read, Ellen?
No, I can't see it, sorry.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, I'll read again.
James, we didn't hear you.
Oh yes, please.
Which paragraph was it?
The formation of axis.
Okay. The formation of axis of resonance, like so many stable conditions making possible the recurrence of such relationships over time, would on the contrary be the pledge of a successful life, in contrast to the diffuse malaise described by so many philosophers, psychoanalysts and others, sociologists about our modernity. And as the formation of these axes is not innate, Rosa calls for the collective action to promote them. In opposition to current trends, another type of being in the world is possible, but it is not possible, could only result from a political, economic and cultural revolution, both simultaneous and concerted.
Let me look at the text in French to see what was the mistake that the translation made.
Another formation of it.
Corde vibrante, axe de résonance. Rosa appelle à une action collective pour les favoriser. So to favor axis, the axis of resonance. Yes. À rebours, you understand? À rebours, you have the translation right? Un autre type d'être dans le monde est possible, mais il ne pourra résulter que d'une révolution politique. So the idea is, where is the paper? The idea, but it is.
Does the axis of resonance in French mean a different meaning than it does in the English translation?
I don't think so.
No.
Another type of well-being in the world is possible, but it is only possible. But it could only result. But it could result only from a political, economic, and cultural revolution. So let's go further to. Whoa, that's not good. Resonance as the reverse of alienation, which is what I said when we commented on Modern Times by Charlie Chaplin. Let's go a bit further with James, if you will.
Okay. In the first half of the book, Rosa distinguishes horizontal, diagonal, and vertical axis of resonance, depending on whether resonance is experienced from relationships with others, things, or existence as a whole. These axes of resonance can be experienced in various spheres, the review of which allows the philosopher to sketch the modern pathologies of resonance, which he explores more systematically in the second part of the book.
Continue, please.
Rosa describes, for example, the way in which the family has become the object of excessive expectations, insofar as it is supposed to offer a resonating haven in which individuals involved outside in competitive relationships and others will find refuge. Activities devoid of warmth and emotion. Now, he warns, the family cannot structurally satisfy the demand for resonance with which it is responsible. The demands of other spheres necessarily infiltrate it, and it harbours activities that are not very conducive to resonance, accumulation of wealth, domestic tasks, etc. In addition, the stability of the nuclear family conflicts with the attraction brought about by the promise of an even wider and changing range of choices.
So do you understand there are two ideas here? One of them is an example. The example is the family. The family is the object of excessive expectations in the perspective of resonance. We expect to have the family as a sort of resonating haven, where we would feel in peace.
Is Rosa saying that because basically that it's saying that because of technology and the advance of technology, maybe it's not been the resonated haven that was expected?
That could be one of the explanations, indeed. There are other activities that he says are devoid of warmth and emotion, such as making money, for instance. But what if the family is infiltrated by the idea of making money, as, for instance, the idea that the family must accumulate wealth so as to be well-being family.
Yeah, so it conflicts. That's what it's saying.
It becomes in conflict with the expectation of a family as a resonating heaven. What about the fact that you have to do all those domestic tasks, as not only making money, but cleaning the house, making food, cooking, etc., etc., to make the domus function, to make the home function. All those things, they are not like meditating. How often do you gather with your family members to do yoga or you know?
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah, and how many of our families are joining to play music together, you know? Not many.
I wonder if things have changed slightly over COVID.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting in behaviour, because we think about the negative of what's happening, but there's positives also. If the families are able to get together and do it, that's the thing. I mean, I was thinking when you said about meditating, how many families do a film night together now? Is that a form of meditation? You know, so does it have its advantages?
Or does it rob us of our time? I quite like the idea of the family playing music together, because in terms of resonance, one of the things that they say about singing in a choir is that there is this sense of being a collective. Yeah. And I think this is what it's talking about. It's more about being a collective rather than the individuals that we've, as was said earlier, that tech robs us of.
Yeah, yeah. I totally understand what you're saying, Scott. And when you think about those folk families that all, you know, over the years and years and years, they've been playing folk music together. My Irish background, and we always had a piano in our house, you know. It's different now.
Very interesting. And you see that the modern times are actually making threats to the family as an ideal, because the family used to be what we call a nuclear family, right? But it conflicts with attraction, and in this sense, what is expressed here is very close to what we saw with Eva Illouz, the attraction of a changing and wider range of choices. What if you're building a family, you have had a kid, but one of the apps on your phone is named Tinder? What if the social networks that we have now makes you more and more keen to meet other people that are more likely to be in the same mood for activities that you feel like than your wife?
Wow. Yeah. Well, it shows how disjointed we've become.
Yeah.
But the very fact it says nuclear instead of extended is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think it's how we meet, like socially, is how we sort of meet each other. Like you have to step outside your family in order to meet other people. But the way that it's done is like, you know, if you're not succeeding socially, then your family breaks down. It seems to be like they come hand in hand. It's not like your family's a safety net anymore. It's like society's actually entered the family home, you know. It's
or you could say the opposite. If you're like in my situation with my daughter, since the COVID, the family have become her carers, her carer now. She hasn't got the outside carers, so it can work the opposite way too. So it's interesting, this relationship with resonance and acceleration. Because we seem to be going backwards and forwards as well. It's quite confusing in one sense, the argument. I think I've lost the argument now.
Let's continue. Let's go a bit further. Maybe Nihal, can you continue?
Yeah. Where are we? I'm sorry. Wider and changing
in a different register.
Yeah. Okay. In a different register, Rosa also evokes the sphere of art. Have we done that now?
No.
Okay, sorry. In a different register, Rosa also evokes the sphere of art, where experiences of beauty and aesthetic practices conducive to resonance are played out. The specific valuation of which it is the subject would reflect, in addition to a search for undeniable resonance, the almost panicked fear of its scarcity. In quotation marks, the tendency to colour and add sound to all surfaces of our life, to the tearful violins that invade car parks, elevators, station halls and shopping centres, would testify to a growing desperation in the face of a dominant institution, in the face of dominant institutionalised forms of relation to the world. This fear and the illusion of being able to create resonant experiences from scratch in a society that represses them would also lead to the proliferation of zones conceived as extra daily oases, the museum, the theatre, or the concert hall.
Do you notice when you go to a museum or a theater or a concert hall that your behavior suddenly changes once you are there? You are culturally determined to adopt an attitude of respect towards the object of art, which makes you more keen to experience resonance.
Yeah.
No,
But also we like to be optimistic.
I disagree. I think that it kind of fragments resonance. If you start thinking, you know, from your video that we watched, you know, he had this little pie chart in his head, and he had this little wave line across the graphics, and he was actually sailing in the sea, like above his head. He's got lots of different fragmented spaces going on as he's cycling on his bike. You know, he's got this idea that, oh, his performance is running, but he'd rather be somewhere else. And on his energy line, his horizon is like, he's got different horizons going on in his body. He's got different environments. He's not at one with the environment around him. He's consumed by these little forms and spaces and fragments inside himself, where he thinks that there are separate spaces. Actually, space is a whole thing and is shared. It's not, you know, it's not cut off like in the opera hall or in the TV or anything like that. It's like we need to get rid of those forms, those borders around forms that create separate spaces, I think.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I think your idea is much more complex than mine. If I may express mine as well as a very basic idea that doesn't need to actually oppose yours, is it's linkable to what a thinker named Walter Benjamin, whom you may have heard of, has said about arts. He said that the experience of art nowadays in modernity, in modern times, is what we have as the experience once had, that people once had of the sacred. Art has replaced in our society the sacred, and museums, theaters, concert halls, they are closed, as you say, Helen, closed entities to differentiate, as another thinker would say, the sacred from what the word, prosaic. Yeah,
that's good enough.
Yeah, and so when you are inside this sphere that is delimited of the specific art space, you are made into a specific subjectivity or attitude, if you will, that is more receptive to the peculiar rhythms or piece of, how would you say, maybe a piece of
leave it at that.
Aesthetics that there is to, that there is to experience.
But then so sorry, Antoine. Could it be also that we factor in, if we're to go and see a concert, it's because say we paid, it's because we've got a certain expectation that we're going to enjoy it. And I think it's part of the human connection where we project that we're going to have a bit of joy. And that probably adds to this sacredness in itself too.
Exactly. You made yourself in the good disposition or attitude or mood to actually resonate with what will happen with the event.
I think we've got to be careful though, because the museum, the theatre and the concert hall are very narrow concepts of that, because there are lots of people who don't appreciate the museum, the theatre and the concert halls, and wouldn't have the same respect or sense of sanctuary that maybe, you know, other people do. So when
entertainments, the cinema could be an entertainment.
Yeah, when we're reading that, we should actually extend that list, because it actually doesn't include all people in that list either.
Yeah, I think we were just mentioning them as examples.
Yes, yeah, it would have been good if Rosa had actually put more examples that were reflective of everybody, really.
Yeah. So let's continue with Niall. One more paragraph.
I think this idea that, like, this idea of seeing something in like this idea of seeing something in an art gallery is kind of trying to reaffirm that we all have our own, we all have separate memories, when actually we're all sharing in the same memory bank, and that a piece of artwork, everyone sees that piece of artwork. It's not there for your own self gratification. It's there to be part of the universal memory, you know. It's not part of your own fucking experience, is it?
I don't know.
I think it's both, personally.
Yeah, both. Yeah, both.
If you read, there's a woman, I think Sarah Ahmed, who talks about how the experience of seeing something is very different at a particular time or to a particular set of people as well. So when you see art and it brings tears to your eyes, and you see some beautiful kind of, I don't know, sort of picture from modernist painting, and that brings tears to your eyes, to another group of people at a different time, that wouldn't happen.
And that's what Jaos used to name horizon of expectation.
Okay.
There's something that would appear as very comical in for a period of time that now feels completely ridiculous. Yeah.
And the other point I was thinking with this as well, once we curate something for a museum, or whatever sort of curated experience, where we're talking about, say, maybe a family, whatever kind of family, extended or nuclear, but the technology can actually make that a process that helps a family or a collective of people experience that at a particular time, back to time in the present, in the time that they choose.
A bit like a book does. Ben.
Yeah, exactly like a book does. Yeah. So if you could sit down and read it all together, and in the same way as now, say you have a Netflix program or something, you decide to watch it, or a BBC iPlayer or something like that, you decide to watch it at the time that's conducive to everybody.
Let's continue. Very interesting comment. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's continue a bit further so we can finish maybe with this text and this time, and study next text next time. The concept of resonance as the virtue of naming what there is in common to a diversity of experiences. So that's what we've been discussing, actually, which we intuitively feel that they are indeed the salt of life. Through it, the author sheds light on a series of pathologies of modernity that we debate, or with which we have to live on a daily basis. On a more theoretical level, the concept also makes it possible to rehabilitate that of alienation widely used until the 70s before being abandoned. Someone else? Scott?
The term has not only, unless Helen wants to do it, the term has not only suffered from the inflation of its use of critical theorists, but from the fact that it suggests a deviation, an oddity from an authenticity of or a human nature that is very complex to specify.
So here we are speaking about the term alienation. Thank you. Continue, please.
None of the candidates' concepts for the definition of the uncorrupted opposite of alienation has held up to this point. Rosa's originality consists in suggesting that the latter must indeed be considered as a state of contrary to a fundamental need of a human being, and that this need may not be defined in a substantial way, since it is a relational need open as to its content.
So that might be the most important sentence, of the text. It's summarizing very well the specificity of Rosa's approach here. So he is trying to have a concept, to build a concept that would be the opposite of alienation. There is a need that is a human need to be to feel good, if you want, to feel good, a need to lead a good life. But how can you conceptualize this need? What do you put in this need? And that's why they say there is no substantial way to conceptualize it. It's a relational need. Relational as in a relation between a human being and the world. It's not a human being saying, I need that, and that is what makes me happy. For instance, love. It's the love is a relation between the some entity, the first being, and another entity. And when those two entities vibrate, if you will, then there is resonance. You see what I'm trying to express very basically?
No, I disagree. I don't think that you can actually have a good life if you're looking at it through someone else's eyes. I think in order to have resonance, you look through your own eyes.
Yes, but it doesn't have to be someone else. Maybe I didn't express myself very well. The relational doesn't mean here someone else. It means something else.
Yeah, your fundamental need in relation to what you need.
Exactly. So, for instance, what would be substantial, and we may talk about that next time, would be bread. Bread is a substance. So instead of saying what mankind needs is bread, Rosa says what mankind needs is a better relationship to the world. I'm saying it in the most basic form possible, just to have everybody understand the difference between substantial and relational.
Or you could say, which is a very simplistic way of putting it, maybe what mankind needs, maybe bread is what mankind may need.
Yeah. So let's take, for instance, the example of bread, not as something substantial, but as something relational. Let's say bread is a relation. Do you understand that? Bread can be conceived as a substance, but it can also be conceived as a relationship that we, as the producers of bread, are having with the world and with our own bodies. As we are using cereals from growing them from the earth, and therefore we are having a more or less good way of producing cereals from the earth, relationship to the earth, and then a relationship to our bodies that we feed. That's a way of resonating with earth and with our own bodies.
It's becoming very Catholic.
In a way, yes, but we don't have to talk about bread. Or actually, Catholicism can be a way of resonating, right? When you go to church to sing with each other on Sundays, it's a way of resonating, no?
Sure.
So it's playing football in the park.
Exactly. Exactly. It's actually one of the examples given in the preface by Rosa. He opposes playing football to working out. He's saying playing football is more relational and is more keen to make you resonate than just working out at the gym by yourself. Even though you can resonate with the machine and with your music, etc., it's more likely. Yeah.
But you can't actually change bread, but you can change, like, you know, yourself. I mean, the self is not the bread, is it? The bread is separate, and the bread is fixed. It has certain organic compounds, whereas, you know, if we're talking about changing the world and things like that, then we self.
You got scrambled, Helen.
Actually, we can't do that. We can't change a piece of bread, but we can change ourselves. Do you understand what I mean? You can't actually have a relation with a piece of bread, but you can use the bread to change yourself. You know, the bread is not going to change anything, is it?
No, it's your fundamental need, isn't it? So, I mean, bread is just an example, but it's any fundamental need. So if we, but I should imagine the question is, what would be our fundamental needs in order to resonate? That's a big question.
Nicely
yeah,
put.
I think it's a very good question. We will see that more next time. And let's finish with this paragraph, and then I introduce the content of next class.
Should I finish it?
Yes, please.
From this point of view, alienation designates, according to him, a kind of relation without relation. That is to say, a silent relation to oneself and to others, and to things and to existence, devoid of reciprocity. I don't know what that was.
Reciprocity.
It is. The resonance is the reverse, because it designates, on the contrary, a related relation or relation of response.
Oh, interesting. So here, as I said last term, there are many ways to build concepts, and one of them, a basic one, is to make oppositions. And here there's an interesting opposition between relation without relation and related relation, or relation of response. When, for instance, you have sex with someone you don't love, and this person is just an object for you, it would be the number one, right? Relation without relation. When two persons are making love with each other, it's a relation of response. That's an example between others. Next time, we will actually discuss bread and how the quality of the bread we make matters.
Well, yeah, because if you're a vegan or anything like that, you have to have a different type of bread. So it's what Helen was saying, you know, the relation of response. It's how you use that thing.
Yes.
Interesting.
So I just want to introduce next class. So I will maybe share again the screen and show you what I have partager l'écran. Tac. Partager. And we go here. River. So we will finish the reading of this article, and we will ask ourselves those questions that I've written here. If you want to start before by thinking about them, you're very welcome. And we will comment two short passages, those two passages. Then we will read the interview of Hartmut Rosa, on why he thinks that the COVID situation is a very rare and good occasion to decelerate. And in a way, I'm giving you tips. In a way, he's kind of saying the contrary of what he was saying in the previous article, which was that the solution to the bad effects of acceleration was not deceleration, because here it's saying it's actually good if we could decelerate a bit. So so in the first article, he's saying the solution to acceleration is resonance, which doesn't imply deceleration. And in the second one, the interview, he says, actually, deceleration could help better resonance. And then we will, in the part B, we will think about resonance and the concept of related relation through 3 examples: bread, through the documentary, Austrian documentary named Brot, that you can find on YouTube. And I would like you to particularly watch from minute 4:30 to 13:13. And then we will discuss the problems of delivered meals and the end of an era, the era of airlines, and everything made very easy and fast through different means of transportation, which are discussed in the interview by Rosa on deceleration. So any comment about this to end the class?
But it's very good, resonating with everybody, and it was this can be a bit more difficult, but we can do it with technology perhaps.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Antoine, and everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to
Neil.
see you all.
It's good to see you guys as well.
Good to hear you, Scott.
Yes, yes, indeed. Good to see you and hear you.
Scott, you definitely have to work on your image for next time. James, if you
so that we can resonate with your image.
Yes,
Yeah.
true. You're right. I accept that. I'll try and work on it. All right.
James, if you want to show us your face next time, you're very welcome, but you don't have to. The same goes for Sneak.
It was lovely to hear James. It's the first time I've heard him read.
Very beautiful voice, James.
Yeah.
Thank you for the reading.
Thank you, Antoine.
Thank you for all your comments. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.
Cheers,
Bye.
Antoine. Bye. Bye all.
Bye.